Alright everyone, my name's Adam Vox, and we're taking a slightly different approach to the review format in this video. This is a product that I'm really excited about and have had a blast using the past couple weeks, and I really couldn't make myself take the time to script it out because it's something that I really just wanted to get in front of you and talk about. And so that's what we're going to be doing here today with the Genovation ControlPad CP48. Let's get into it. So the CP48 from Genovation is a 48 key control pad, and they do have a few different versions of this. They have a general one and then a Mac specific one, and then they have the 48 key one like this, and then the 24 key one, which is just basically sliced vertically down the middle for a much smaller one. For most desk setups that aren't like super wide open and have a ton of space, I would actually recommend going with the 24 key, as having the smaller form factor would allow you to have a lot more space on your desk, because this takes up a lot of space. This is basically half the size of my 10 keyless keyboard, or 10 keyless keyboard. And so it's fairly big, but that's 48 keys, and there is dual layer functionality, which I'll get into in a minute. And so that's a lot of keys. So the general concept behind this product is that you have 48 keys that you can program to whatever macros, shortcuts, or custom keys that you want, which is fairly cool. And that's why I was interested in it. A bit of backstory real quick. I actually saw this on a mass drop deal for a little under $100. I think it runs about $115 to $140 usually, somewhere around the $100 to $140 range. And you know, it was cheaper. Not as cheap as I thought. I'm having to back off my mass drop shopping a bit, as sometimes I'm just like, oh, that looks like a good deal on a product that I've never heard of that I'd love to try. Let me buy it now, when it turns out the deal isn't quite as good as it might seem. Different story for another time. But I saw this on Massdrop and the deal didn't go through. So I originally wanted to buy it and the deal didn't go through. Not enough people were interested. So I just reached out to Genovation. I was like, okay, I couldn't buy it. Can you send me one? And they sent me over this one. Now this is a loaner unit, which is why you will see on here I've set up little custom labels for the keys, which again I'll touch on in a second. And that's why I didn't do much of a good job with them, because I didn't want to put in all the time and energy to design these custom key labels and cut them out and stuff like that for something I'm going to send back and may not actually get to buy for a while. However, if I get to keep this, or if I buy my own very shortly, I will completely revamp the keyboard setup, and I'll do a separate video on that because that would be pretty cool to see. So the basic concept is you have a custom keypad, kind of like the game pads that I've reviewed, like the Logitech G13, but instead of being designed for gaming, this is designed for productivity. So it's all about the macros and the shortcuts. Taking a physical overview, you have 48 keys, and these are mechanical key switches. To be totally honest, off the top of my head, I don't know if it's even listed what kind of mechanical switches they are, but they actually feel really, really nice. Like I'll do a quick. Like they sound like blacks or reds. They're not quite as clicky as my blues, but they still sound fairly good. And you have 48 of them. And then inside the box here, I did go ahead and bring out the packaging. You get the keypad with the keys already installed, and then you get a key puller, a custom key puller here with a couple extra keys. That way, in case something happens to your keys or you want swappable keys, you have a puller for the keys as well as some extra keys. And then you have driver software on a CD, which is their macro master. And then you get a little warranty card. And then you get the USB cable here. And this is actually an Ethernet to USB cable, as this product, like I said, there's a few different versions. One of the versions of this product actually acts as a virtual serial device. And so basically they've had it designed so that it'll work with anything. So it's about as analog as it gets coming out of the device with a Ethernet connection, but then it terminates for the one that I have in a USB connection. That way it will work as a HID, or human interface device, I believe it stands for, on your PC. They do have Mac specific ones, and you just take the rear of the device here and pop the Ethernet cable in, and then plug in your USB connection. One more thing to note on the back here is that it has two different modes. It has a keyboard mode for the keypad and the macros and things like that. It also has a flash drive mode. Now for the flash drive mode, it does have a little bit of storage on here for you to store your custom profiles, which is pretty sweet. This is, again, something that comes from a gaming keyboard concept in that some gaming keyboards and mice are now coming with onboard memory to store your custom profiles and custom, data for your macros and for your programming. You can do that on here. So this is a very gaming ideal based product based around productivity. And since a lot of people are actually using gaming mice for their productivity due to features like this, it's cool to see a company like Genovation putting it out here in productivity form. So with having it in the flash drive mode, you can load or save your custom profiles to it so it's always stored on the device. And then when you want to use it in the keyboard mode, simply flip it back into keyboard mode and the software will pick it up and it's good to go. Now this does require custom programming software to use. That should kind of be expected for this kind of product, but just so you know. And it's fairly straightforward. Like I said, it's designed to work with anything. And this is a fairly long cable. I believe it is bigger than 6 feet. Like you can't see my whole wingspan in the view, but I'm about 6'3", and your wingspan generally matches your height. I have at least a 6 foot wingspan, and this is longer by maybe like an inch than my entire wingspan. So it's about a 6 foot cable. It's not braided or anything like that. It is just rubber. It is fairly thick, so it's not gonna get like wound up too easily like some of the thinner USB cables, which is very nice and it's very high quality. And so taking the rest of the physical tour, we have a very sturdy frame. Like there's no flex to this whatsoever. It's probably just about as sturdy as most keyboard, real rugged keyboards I use, like the 6G V2 from SteelSeries or my Watts Code. Like I cannot make it flex. And then it has 4 little rubber feet on the bottom here that keep it from slipping fairly well. It does fairly well. And then it has 2 flip out risers, which I absolutely love using. I use pretty much all keyboards on risers. My only problem is these are very thin risers and they do not have any sort of rubber gripping on the edge of the risers. So that actually removes some of the anti-slip functionality from the keypad itself, which is kind of annoying because it no longer works as it's supposed to just because you change it into a mode that it's also designed to be used in. So that's a little weird. One of the things that they also brag about in the power and the product features is that it consumes less than, I believe, 10 milliamps of power over USB, so it can be powered by pretty much any USB source and not use a lot of power, which is also really nice. Probably expected for a keyboard, but pretty nice nonetheless. No LED lighting under the keys or anything like that, but to just power keys and send the keys through doesn't use much power at all. That's it for the physical overview you have of the base itself. It does have the Genovation ControlPad logo on the top, and then it does have a LED light, which I can't really show on camera while I have it unplugged, but a LED light in the top right. Initially this shows that it's plugged in and in keyboard mode, but once you start loading macros and stuff, you can actually use this to measure, or you can use it for whatever you want. So for example, I think by default, once you get it programmed and stuff, it will start using it to display whether or not you have caps lock enabled. So whenever I enable caps lock, that blue light lights up, which for me is very, very convenient because my Watts Code keyboard, which I've previously reviewed, you can check out the YouTube card over here. It has tiny little parts for lights for the caps lock and number lock, which I can't really see while using it with the risers up. And so this is a much more visual identification of whether or not caps lock is on, and it's closer to my caps lock because I keep this next to my keyboard. Caps lock would be like right here. Well, flipped it. So caps lock's like right here and the LED's right next to it. Then it has some technical information on the back, and we get to the keys. Again, I mentioned these are mechanical of some sort, and then if I pull one off here, I will do this on this camera. If I pull one off, I'll use their key puller. I didn't want to open up this plastic, but that is the point of a review unit. So we'll take this out a little bit here, use their key puller, and pull off one of the keys. Because they are mechanical, so you can pull them off just like any other mechanical key. You then have, like I said, a normal mechanical key cover, but they come with this translucent bit that comes off that you can put your own custom labels over. And then inside their software, they do include a label making template. It's not the best, it's not great at all, and it's only designed for the 24 key model. And so you actually have to basically make 2 of them for the 48 key model, which is fine, but kind of annoying nonetheless. And like I said, it's not great. I ended up having to copy it over into Photoshop, do some doohickey stuff there, and then save it elsewhere because Photoshop, a lot of printing options don't print, there's not, for whatever reason with printing on a computer, you can't easily just print like real-time size. Like you can't just tell it to print its native size. You have to, do you want a full page photo or whatever? So it took a little bit to get it printed out, and they're not, what I ended up with is not the full size of the key. It does not look perfect, but it looks all right. I mean, like I said, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. So I got copy, cut, paste, F8, which is a keyboard shortcut, and I'll get into the programming in a second, and then a render button, which does Control M and renders in my Adobe Premiere Pro CC software. So pretty fleshed out, nice piece of hardware. And then the software makes things a world more complicated, but essentially in a good way. So like I said, it does come with driver software on the CD. It is copyright 2015, and it works with Windows 2K, XP, Vista 7, 8, and it's not listed on here, but Windows 10, it does work with my Windows 10 build, 32 and 64-bit. So like I said, designed to work with anything. The only issue is you have to buy separate Mac and PC versions. I would make sure, I installed off of here, but I would also make sure on their website that there's not a newer version of the software out. You'll want the newest version in most instances. But then you power on the software, and none of it makes a whole lot of sense. And it took me a long time to actually learn to program this thing. But man, 5 hours later, once I actually got these 5 shortcuts working, it was so rewarding. So in terms of programming this thing, I'm actually going to, if I have time, because again, I do have to return this at some point. This was meant to be a 30-day loaner. If I have the time, or I get an extension on the loan, or I get to keep it, I will do a tutorial on some basic programming for this. If you're going to get into the more advanced programming kind of things, you probably are already in the programming kind of mind, and it's not something I can entirely help you with once it gets to a certain level of intensity and difficulty, simply because I don't have the time and energy to be blunt. It took a long time to, get it working, and it's not something I feel like doing tutorials for. It's pretty intuitive as long as you understand like basic programming concepts and scripting, but So my approach to programming this was actually, and the reason I wanted it in the first place, was actually inspired by Taryn from Linus Media Group, which is why I'm wearing my Linus Tech Tips shirt today. Taryn is one of their video editors and producers, and he's on his personal channel. It's just a small little Premiere focused personal channel. He's done a lot, like tons of stuff regarding optimizing your workflow in Premiere Pro. He even did a 4-hour tutorial on how he edits videos, which was kind of crazy. But one of the things he's done is he's put together tons of scripts and macros using the auto hotkey scripting language platform, which has been around forever. I remember reading about it on Lifehacker like years and years ago, like back in early high school even maybe, using auto hotkey to automate and optimize Premiere workflow, because a lot of their keyboard shortcuts aren't as intuitive or either aren't as programmable as he'd like. And he's even gotten stuff to where you can do stuff that keyboard shortcuts in that software does not allow you to do at all. So I wanted to adapt that from normal keyboard usage, because a big reason I don't use a lot of keyboard shortcuts is my short-term memory and my, converting to long-term memory for a lot of Control X, Control M, Control F5, Control Shift X. Like, I use so many different softwares and, programs, so many different software platforms and so many different keyboard shortcuts that I can't remember hundreds of those for honestly the hundreds of automated things that I would want to do in video editing. So applying them all to a preset set of keys that I could label myself seemed like a brilliant idea. And so far I'm still on board with it even a few weeks later. So one of the things, that is my F8 key here, which obviously you could use F8, but what the idea would be that you assigned it to something else more difficult to acquire, because the beauty of using keyboard shortcuts is you can assign something to, Control Alt Shift X, Control Alt F, things that you'd never actually remember or hit, but then macro these on a keypad like this. And so I took his auto hotkey scripts and his automation platform that he's essentially developed here and applied it to macros within the software for this keypad, and it's been awesome. So my F8 button on here is actually to automatically select the dip to black transition in Premiere and automatically set it as it selects the search panel for the effects, searches for that transition, selects it, sets it as the default, then reselects the clip I was already on and applies that transition to the clip. All with just the press of one button. Just and that's not something you can natively do inside Premiere. And so I have 48 keys and dual layers of them that if I ever actually get this set up, I could do a lot with. Like I said, the software is a little bit complicated, but essentially what you, in a nutshell, like the concept is very simple. You select a key, you type in the shortcut or script that you want the key to do. So Control-Alt-Y, or like I have cut, copy, and paste as individual keys. So Control-X, Control-Y, or Control-C, Control-X, Control-V. I am running on a little bit of lack of sleep here. And then same thing for my render button is Control-M, and then it detects that, and then you save it to the keypad, and that's what happens when you hit the key. Now, something I was missing is there's actually a final step after you save the profile and test it and stuff, is actually even before you have to test it, is you have to download it to the keypad. You can't just save it in the software and then it just work. You have to go through and manually re-download it every time to the keypad. And I didn't even know this was a step. Like, I didn't even see this originally in the software. There's not a whole great user interface navigation or workflow from create your macros, save your profile, download it to the keypad, test it, use it. It's just, here's everything at once. And so you create your macros, you download it to the keypad, and then you can test it. If you test it before you download it to the keypad, every key is enter. And so I spent the first 2 days of me using this software confused why no matter what I tried programming the keys to do, all I did was hit enter. I was ready to throw it out a window. Eventually I figured it out, and it is so freaking flexible. Like I also mentioned, the keys are dual layer, like a normal keyboard, in that you can hold Shift, Control, Alt, whatever, and assign an entirely separate set of commands to these keys. So like Shift, one of these buttons, so like my F8 button could do something totally different than just the F8 button. And so that's really, really cool. The last thing I want to talk about, of course, is the keys themselves. This is a genius design idea. So not only do you have the already, the transparent little keycap covers in which you can put your own printed out stickers or labels underneath so you can identify it manually yourself, but then of course, since they are mechanical switches, you can just remove the keycaps altogether, buy your own custom keycaps because there are a plethora of availability for them. For example, on my WASD code keyboard, I replaced the Windows keys with portal icons. So if you could find keycap covers that represent what you're trying to do, then you could do that instead of having to print off your own and have a really nice looking keyboard. Now, most of those are probably centered around games. So unless you have, you want a 48, shortcut game board, which I guess could be cool for some, for their ultimate elite gaming setup. If you just wanted to hit one button to launch a game, you might have trouble finding enough keycaps for specific programs or shortcuts. And again, for like copy, cut, and paste. I usually say it cut, copy, and paste. So maybe, I don't know. For things like that, you may not have the best of time finding keycaps for that, but you can also 3D print them, etc. You have unlimited flexibility in how you identify these. You could even just mark on them or print off paper and mark on it with marker if you wanted. So tons and tons you can do with this bad boy. So this has been a pretty long video. Like I said, it's a pretty complicated product. This is why I didn't want to script it out, because things would get way too wordy. And honestly, by scripting it, the video might be twice as long. Whereas if I just sat down and talked to you about it like this, I think I did a much better job of explaining this to you and maybe selling you on it. Because for me, this has been genius in terms of optimizing my editing workflow. I only labeled 5 keys, but I've used about 3 rows of these at the moment for editing, and it's been a blast. So let me know in the comments down below if I did a good enough job explaining it, if you get what this product's about, if you would use it in your workflow. Like I said, it is about $100, which is an expensive buy for some, but it's not a hugely expensive product for what it is. So I think it falls on a good point. I think 50 to 75, although that would be the 24 model probably. So I was gonna say, I think about 50 to 75 would be a reasonable buy for this, but definitely interested in potentially getting it for myself or trying to talk them into letting me keep this, because I have had a blast with it. And I think if I fully decked it out with my own shortcuts and stuff and all of Terran's macros and things like that, I would have a super sweet Adobe Premiere workflow going. So just to round up, 48 programmable keys, they are dual layer. They are mechanical, which is always nice and sticks with your mechanical keyboard if you already have them. Works with just about anything. Unlimited flexibility in terms of programming it. Awesome design in the ability to label the keys pretty much however you want. And a pretty badass product nonetheless. If you enjoyed the review, guys, be sure to smash the like button. If you like this format over the standing up like scripted format, let me know. I would only do this for specific products, but this was kind of nice nonetheless. Be sure to subscribe for more awesome tech videos. Come check out our other channels. I've started a social media channel for social media marketing, YouTube tips. I'm quite a veteran for that, and that's actually my job now, is researching this kinds of things. So I turned it into a YouTube channel. We have a awesome vlog channel going. I've just relaunched my Pokemon TCG channel for geeky stuff, and then I have a gaming channel as well. So links to those in the description below. And otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching.